Marketers are some of the most inefficient users of Claude, and that's because every single time they start their sessions, they're starting off cold. So Claude has no context of what the business does, what problems they solve, and who exactly their ideal customer is. And that is why they never get the specific output that they want for their use case. And in this video, I want to solve that. And I want to solve it using a tool that you've probably seen LinkedIn posts about, YouTube videos, X articles, and a whole bunch of other content. And that is Claude Cowork. So in order to use Claude Cowork, we're going to need to set things up properly. So what I mean by that is that we're going to need to download the Claude desktop app to access Cowork. And another thing to take into consideration is that Cowork is only available on the paid plans. So that's the plan starting from about $20 a month. Right? So it's very easy. You're just going to come here, navigate to downloading Cowork. Whether you're on Mac, iOS, Windows, whatever it is, you're just going to download it. And then once you've downloaded it, you are going to come to this app. And so the app is going to look something like this, right? With kind of three different kind of interfaces that you can tap into. And this is the chat. So the normal chat is what I use for just everyday things. If I want to get recommendations for something, almost like everyday simple use. And then when it comes to Cowork, this is when I obviously now start using it for marketing purposes, pointing it to a specific folder, helping me create different assets and stuff like that, right? And then, of course, the last section is going to be code, which is Claude Code. But personally, for myself, I don't use the Claude Code for the desktop app. Rather, I prefer to use it in VS Code. So, but we're not going to be speaking about Claude Code. That's a whole other video and section on its own. So we are going to come over here to Claude Cowork, right? And so we're going to navigate it and we're going to make sure that we are pointing it towards the right folder. So for the context of this video, I've come up with a fake kind of SaaS marketing platform known as Pagebull. So that's what we're going to be basically using as our kind of fake company, in which we're going to be using its folders, its LinkedIn posts, and all this other good stuff, right? So we are going to make sure that we are going to point it towards the right folder. So we're going to come here. So for me, obviously, where your folder exists and whatever is going to be different. But the main key principle and thing you want to make sure you have is that you want to have a folder that basically contains everything that has to do with your company. So these could be exports of all your LinkedIn posts. It could be exports of all your blog posts. It could be export of like your brand guidelines and different stuff like that. And so you just want to have like a sort of centralized hub of a folder that has all this relevant information that you can easily tap and have access into. Right. So for me, this is going to be our sort of hub, which is Pagebull Marketing. So inside of Pagebull Marketing, you'll see I have a blog, a brand, Claude MD, which we'll speak about now, customer evidence, email launches, all this other good stuff, right? So this is how exactly it's going to look for you, whereby it's going to be a centralized folder that's going to have all your different collateral and different information that has to do with your company. So we're going to just say always allow and just put that in there, or you can just say allow. Now, a very central or a very important piece of document that exists within this folder that I'm sure you guys saw was this over here, which is your Claude.md. So your Claude.md quite simply has all the relevant information that pertains to your company, what exactly you're going to be using Cowork for, and all that good stuff, right? So the easiest way that I found to create this Claude.md is actually by using the chat interface. So if we come back here to chat, what we can do is we can actually just take a bunch of information. So let's say that we were creating a Claude.md for Pagebull. So what we could do is we could basically add files of photos. We could come here to this Pagebull marketing asset. And then what we could do is we could come here, brand, and then we could just paste these three things. So it's our brand voice, our messaging framework, and our product positioning.md files. So those are three things that we're going to just connect here. And then we're simply going to say, or sort of ask Claude, can you help me create a Claude.md file using these relevant pieces of info pertaining to my business. And then we can just prompt it to do that. We'll wait for it to work its magic. So this is the other thing that I really like to use Claude for. So here it is asking, Is it for Claude Code or for something you're using? So what will this Claude.md primarily be used for? So is it going to be writing content, building, coding, both content creation? So we're going to be writing content. So I really like this ask user question tool from Claude. It basically allows for Claude to ask you a bunch of questions so that it can build out what it is that you want specifically. And so that's why using the chat is so useful and helping it basically kind of construct the Claude.md file for you. So now it said, got it. So it's content focused, and now it's going to build out our Claude.md for us. So because I've already created a Claude.md file, I'm not going to wait for it to kind of finish. So once it's done, you are basically going to then put that Claude.md file into the specific folder that you have all your marketing assets and collateral and whatever relevant information pertains to your business, right? And so once we do that, then we're going to basically come to the Cowork tab, and then we're going to point it towards the specific folder we are going to work within. So this folder basically gives Claude Cowork all the relevant context that it needs, right? And so now we can begin using it for our different use cases. So this video is going to be broken down into 3 different levels, from level 1 to 3, with level 1 being the easiest thing that we can do with Cowork, and then level 3 being the more advanced sort of different things that we can do with Cowork, right? So level 1, quite simply, we are going to create a blog post. So first things first is that we are going to take a look at what's in my company folder that is in relation to the blog. So if we come here, we're going to go to page pull. So we're going to go to page pull, and then we're going to see what exactly is in my blog folder. So we have the blog writing guidelines. So this is all the guidelines in which you want to kind of direct Claude to do when it comes to writing blogs. And then we're going to have our draft section. So this draft section is the folder in which Claude is going to put the first draft of the blog that it gives us. So once we're done with the prompt, we're going to ask it to drop it in the drafts folder. And then here are some published blogs. So why we have this published blog section is so that Claude has kind of like references that it can look at. So different examples and stuff like that. What we're going to do is now we're going to prompt it. And we're going to prompt it so that it gives us the specific output we're looking for. So here's the prompt that I'm going to use. Another hack that you can use for your kind of prompting is that you actually want to use the chat interface to help you prompt better. It's like the biggest thing ever. So what you are going to do is you're going to take whatever prompt that you had in mind, and then you're going to put it in the chat and basically just ask the chat, can you help me improve this prompt? And then it's just going to give you a much better prompt so that you can use it within Cowork so that you can get a specific desired output. And like I said earlier, the chat is also able to actually ask you questions so that it can create a better prompt for what exactly you're looking for. So that's another big hack that you want to use. So let's get back here and basically see what is the exact prompt we're going to use. So I'm just going to come in here, copy paste. So basically says, I want to write a blog post for PagePull about why customers should use PagePull versus doing it manually, talking about all the different benefits. So what PagePull basically does is that it's a company that allows for people to basically use a website link. And from that website link, they can then sort of develop 30 days worth of marketing material. So that's blogs, emails, and different stuff like that. So quite simply, this tool just basically scrapes the entire HTML of the website, understands the company better, and then spits out different marketing collateral just using that link. So for this blog post, what I wanted to do is kind of come up with a blog about why customers should use PagePull versus doing it manually. And then we want to speak about all the different benefits. This again is not the best prompt. I actually don't think I used the chat for this. So what you're going to do is basically look at the brand voice document. So we are directing it as to what documents and folders it needs to look at. So the brand voice document, the positioning document, 3 to 5 examples that I have put into the file, as well as our blog writing guidelines. And then once it's done, we want it to put the draft, the first initial draft, in the drafts folder in the draft subfolder under the blog main folder. So let's prompt it. So what's really cool here is that you can actually see it give itself its own step-by-step to-do list. So first, it reviewed the brand voice, positioning guidelines, and different stuff like that. And another cool thing is that if we are not actually agreeing with the kind of to-do list that it wants to go through, we can come in here and just ask a question as to why exactly it's doing that, or we can recommend a change. Claude Cowork is so powerful, which is why I think a lot more marketers need to be using it, just because I don't think there's any tool out there that has this level of power for such a price. So it's doing its thing, it's going through the commands, it's updating its to-do list. And for us, we're just going to step back. Maybe if we were doing another task, we're just going to let it kind of, do its thing. And then once it's done, it will basically notify us if you have notifications turned on, and then basically just give us what it is that we're looking for. So another thing that you need to be very, very intentional about is making it as easy for Cowork to give you what it is that we're looking for. So what exactly do I mean by this? Is that there's a reason why I gave it a blog guide writing framework. So this is almost a framework and a guide for it to use so that it actually gives us what we're looking for. I think a lot of marketers basically just hand off a lot of things to whether it's Claude or ChatGPT and expect it to work magic. No, these LLMs need context. They need to understand what it is that you're looking for. Now, thank God for the Claude team that actually built this user question tool that allows for Claude to actually ask you questions pertaining to your specific problem or whatever it is that you're looking for. But obviously, we don't always want to rely on that. We also want to make sure that we're giving it guidelines, we're giving it frameworks to follow, we're giving it examples that it can take a look at so that it understands what good looks like in the first place. So here it is. It created the blog. So the blog is titled, You Already Know How to Create Content Manually. Here's Why You Should Stop. So obviously that's the headline that it went with. We could come up with a different headline, and then the meta description. So it goes again. So this is a full length blog post. A marketing manager at a Series B company told us she spends every Monday, yada, yada, yada. Boom, 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 boom. And then bottom line, want to run this test now, and all this different good stuff, right? So yeah, this is a very simple output. This is exactly what we were looking for. And this is level one. So if you're not impressed yet, I don't blame you, because this is still level one. We're just basically looking at what exactly it is that we can do. And this is a very simple output. And most people already can do this within the chat. But this, again, is just something that you can do with Cowork better, in the sense that you are giving it more context, a framework, a guideline. And so, yeah, let's get on to the next level. So level two for this video is a multi-channel launch. And the reason why we're calling it level two is that now it's not just a basic, output, which is a blog post. Now we are going to be leveraging parallel agents, which is one of the features that exist within Cowork. So let's take a scenario where this fake company that I created is launching a new feature called a carousel creator, where a person can take their company's link, paste it into Pagepool, and Pagepool will give it like three different pieces of content that they can kind of post in the form of a carousel, which is why it's called Carousel Creator. So we'll need a full launch bundle that consists of a blog post, a change log, a LinkedIn post, and an official tweet. So as a marketer, you are launching a new feature and you need to come up with different marketing assets so that you can launch this feature successfully. And so Cowork is actually going to help us with this. So let's get back into it. And so the prompt that we are basically going to be giving Cowork is quite simple. So here it is. I'm launching a new feature for my product. Read the product spec doc in this folder. From this, I want you to create a changelog by looking at the changelog guidelines plus three examples inside of it. Look what we're doing. We're directing it. We're giving it guidance and guidelines. Then I want you to create a blog post by looking into the blog folder, looking at the blog guideline doc, plus the three examples under the blog example subfolder. Then lastly, I want you to look at the socials folder and create a LinkedIn post and a tweet. Now here's the magic. So please make use of parallel agents to create each individual launch asset. Create a new folder called launch assets where you'll put each asset created. So again, this is a very, very bad prompt. It's a very bad prompt. But again, we can really just take this, put it into the chat, and come up with something better. And I'll show you how right now. So like I said, when it comes to improving our prompts, we don't have to even have like some complicated prompt. We can just ask the chat, please improve this prompt for me so that I can use this with Claude Cowork. So here's our prompt, and Claude was actually looking to see if there's a skill that it can use to help it write prompts better. Personally, in my own skill kind of library, I don't have any skills for prompt writing. And skills is actually something that we're going to get into for level 3 of this video, but I'll just touch briefly on it. So, and again, it was searching the web, probably looking for different ways in which it can come up with the best prompt for me to use within Cowork. And so here is the improved prompt. So it says, I'm launching a new product feature. Read the product spec doc in this folder first to understand the feature. Then create a folder called launch assets and use 4 parallel agents to produce the following deliverables simultaneously. Agent 1, read changelog, and so boom. And it's just like, it is 10 times better than what exactly I had here, which is like now it's actually giving Cowork a prompt that Cowork understands. And this is the best way of using the chat feature in the sense that if you're going to use chat in Cowork, you want chat to basically be your refiner, helping you refine prompts and different requests that you have so that you can come back into Cowork and give it the best possible prompt. So let's go back to our sort of interface with Cowork. So what we're going to do is we are going to just come in here, take this, copy it, and put it into Cowork. And then boom, we're just going to launch it. And now we're just going to look at Cowork do its thing. And thanks to the Claude chat, we're actually able to come up with a prompt that's quite good. So now it is basically doing what it needs to. So it's reading the product spec and setting up the folder structure. Then it's going to launch the agents into doing that. So again, what we're doing is we're coming up with 4 different pieces of marketing collateral using one main piece, which was a product spec. So let's say your technical team came up with a product spec and you as the marketer basically read that and you changed the language up a bit. And now what you did is you came up with your own kind of product spec that you can put into Cowork. And then from Cowork, you can spin up 4 different pieces of marketing collateral just from that one product spec. So this is really incredible stuff that we're able to do. And again, we're giving it guidelines, we're giving it, frameworks that it can follow so that it gives us exactly what it is that we're looking for. So good. Now I have the full picture of the folder structure. It was reading. Again, here's the to-do list. It read the product spec. It created the launch assets folder. It is writing the changelog entry. So for all these different things, the reason why they're all highlighted blue is because they are basically being done at the exact same time, which is that it is launching 4 different, sub agents to basically write the changelog, write the blog post, write the LinkedIn post, and write the tweet. And it's doing this using the frameworks that we gave it. Now that it's done giving us what exactly it is that we were asking for, it gives us the directions to kind of say that the files are available in launches under Carousel Creator V2 under launch assets. So that's exactly where it is that we're gonna go. So here's the page pull marketing folder. So it said it's under launches. So we're going to come to launches. Then it said it's under Carousel Creator V2. So we're going to come here. And then under Carousel V2, it's under the launch assets. Now here it is. So we have a couple launch assets that we can use ready-made, and Cowork basically just did that in a matter of about 2 minutes, 30 seconds max. So here's the blog post that we are basically going to use. This is the meta description. LinkedIn carousels are your best performing content. Here's why 40% of marketers never finish them and how to fix it. So it used our blog writing guideline to come up with this. So LinkedIn carousels are the highest engagement, yada, yada, yada. And here is basically the CTA, different stuff like that. And now we can actually go back and see, yeah, how does the change log look? Again, it used our change log kind of guideline. So here's the date, the feature, the summary, what's new. So basically, if you're familiar to how change logs look, this is perfectly what it is that it looks like and what exactly we're looking for. So again, it excelled at that. And then here comes the LinkedIn post. So Carousel Creator V2 LinkedIn post. We cut the carousel creation from 14 minutes to 5. I like that headline. I like that hook a lot. Your current workflow probably looks like this: paste URL, open Canva, manually match brand colors, yada yada yada. It opened up with a pane. That's 5 tools, 5 content. It aggravated the pane, and then it comes into this. It basically presents the problems. So obviously created this LinkedIn post using some of the very well-known copywriting frameworks, and then basically gave a CTA and different stuff like that. Go create something. I like this. I like this a lot. Okay, so that was level 2. We got different pieces of launch assets that we can use. Now, let's head on to level number 3, which is a little bit more advanced. And here, what we're actually going to be doing is we are going to be making use of both parallel agents and Claude skills. So, Claude skills, you've probably heard of them, probably watched some sort of video or content around them. And these are just basically mini guidelines that Claude follows to deliver out a specific task. That is the most layman's way that I can kind of put it, right? And so for this one, we're actually going to be making use of skills as well as parallel agents, right? So this actually shouldn't say multi-channel launch. It should actually say LinkedIn audit and creation. So, what exactly are we going to be doing at this level? So, let's say you're a marketer and one of the channels that you want to improve on this year is LinkedIn. And you've been posting for some months now and you're not exactly seeing some traction, or you are basically having a lot of your customers confused. So, what we're going to be doing is we're basically going to be doing a sort of audit on what exactly it is that we're posting versus what our content pillars are. So your content pillars are basically the sort of like framework and sort of guidelines as to what content you need to be producing, right? So you've been posting for months, 10 posts, but you never stop to check whether you are actually posting about the things your strategy says you should be posting. So your content strategy says 25% of your posts should be customer stories, another 20% should be tactical marketing advice. But when you actually look at what you're posting, half of it is product updates, zero customer stories, one piece of technical advice. And so you're way off, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to tell Cowork to read every post we published, compare it against our actual content pillars, and then tell us exactly where the gaps are. So that's step one. So we're not only going to audit it, but we're actually going to fix it. Then for step two, we're actually going to fill those gaps, but not in a generic way. If it finds that customer stories are missing, it's going to write the customer story content, and it's going to do so using our LinkedIn writing skill. So different skills fire depending on what type of gaps it needs to fill. And it does this all in parallel, one agent per gap, all running at the same time. So if it's a customer story that's a gap, or it's a tactical story that's a gap, if it identifies those two gaps, then it will launch two different agents to tackle those two different gaps. So let's actually get into doing this. So one of the best ways that I would recommend for coming up with skills is using the chat interface. So let's say that you were creating LinkedIn content and you're tired of writing it out manually. You could come into Claude and basically say something like, I'm tired of writing my LinkedIn content all manually. I want you to help me come up with a skill that takes all the content that I produced, some of my best pieces, turns those pieces into principles, and then Claude reads those principles and converts those principles into a skill that I can reuse. So that is something that you can come up with. Now, I'm not going to prompt this simply because I have my own LinkedIn sort of writer already. So that's okay. So that's exactly how you can come up with different skills. And then you're going to input, all your best performing content into the chat interface. And then it's going to read it and then come up with a skill. So once it's done with a skill, then you can come here. You can come to Cowork, and then you can basically so I have skills, so fake skills again for the purposes of this video. Let's say that it's a LinkedIn brief skill that basically gives us like an audit brief. So this is a skill that I want to use in the future for all my cowork projects. And then it will basically do that. So I'm not going to prompt it just because I already have this set up. So we don't need to do that. And so what I am now going to do is I'm just going to come back here, and then I am going to copy this prompt that I already wrote and just chug it into here. So I want you to audit my LinkedIn content and fill the gaps. First, read my content pillar, and then step one. So again, I use the chat interface to come up with this prompt so that it comes up with a better prompt, better than I could ever write. So it's going to help me do all these different things. If I go into my socials, I go into my LinkedIn. So they are basically going to look at my content pillar strategy. So what exactly are the pillars of, so content pillar one is thought leadership, customer stories, product tips, advice, and then behind the scenes, all with their relevant percentages, right? And so that's exactly what I want it to be looking at. And then it's going to come up with audits in here and different briefs. And then it's also going to look at the different published posts. So what you can do is you can basically just export or kind of copy and paste all the different posts that you have. And then you can then, once you've done that, you can then just download them. You can put them in a single like Word document and then just download them and then just put them in your kind of folder so that Cowork can actually look at it, right? So it's going to basically audit my LinkedIn content. So it's going to audit what we've posted. So it's going to look at the published folder. So the published folder is where all my content exists, and then compare it against the pillar targets in our content pillar strategy. And then I want it to basically show me actual versus targeted percentages. So basically, if our targeted percentage for thought leadership content was 20% and it's only 10%, that means there's a 10% kind of deficit. And so, and then which ones are over or under indexed, and then rank the top three, and then fill those gaps as well. So let's actually prompt it. So remember, for the purposes of this specific section of this video, we are making use of both parallel agents as well as skills. Now, for you to see whether or not your skill is live, you can basically just do like a forward slash, and then you can have something, and then you can see all the different skills that you have. So for the purposes of this specific section, it's going to use my LinkedIn writing skill, right? So that it can actually come up with the content that I want it to come up with. So it's taking a look. It's looking at all the different posts, with the dates that were published and all these different things. And now it's basically coming up with an audit. It's reading the brand and voice skills. So you see the power of just you working with Cowork in the sense that it has all this context that it can use. And sometimes it can even look into that context without us, prompting it to. So like here, it's looking at my brand voice and LinkedIn writing skill for post creation. And then it's basically just going to help me write better content that's actually in my brand voice, right? To begin with. Because what you will see is that I actually didn't even ask it to look at the brand voice, but it went ahead and did it simply because it's smart enough to understand that if I want to write LinkedIn content, it has to be in the specific voice that actually is tailored towards my specific brand. So here it is. Here it is giving us an audit. So here's the audit. Our targeted percentage was 25%. So an actual, there's no customer stories. So there's a variance of 25%, meaning that like we're not doing well. So that's a negative 25%. Technical marketing advice should be 20%, but it's only 10. So now it's giving us, so now it gave us like almost like the full audit. So here's the audit that it gave us. So now we're able to see like, oh damn, like we are not achieving any of the targeted kind of topics that we actually wanted to speak about, right? And so now for step two, so that's step one done, and then for step two, it actually came up with a different posts to actually fill those gaps. So customer story one, a 3% team that went from 4 to 19 blog posts. Customer story two, so again, we want to make sure that when it comes to doing all these different sets of things, we are actually giving it context. So for these customer stories, we can feed it like case studies and stuff like that, so that it actually comes up with relevant customer stories that actually happen, and not just, coming up with things out of thin air, right? And then he actually wrote and also a technical marketing post, right? And so remember, I asked it to basically look at that and then also publish it in the drafts. So that's exactly what it did. It gave us 3 different drafts that we can draw from so that we can actually fill those different gaps, right? A 3-person marketing team, yada yada yada. So it actually not only did it do an audit. So here's the audit that it did. Not only did it do an audit, but it also gave us the specific drafts in order for us to actually fill those gaps to begin with, right? And it did so by looking at the content pillar strategy. And then, yeah, so these are the 3 different jobs that we can look at, and we are happy people. So that is exactly what it is that we were looking for. So Claude Cowork did exactly what it is that we wanted in the first place, and we used both skills as well as parallel agents to get stuff done faster in a way that's specifically tailored for the output that we're looking for. So that's exactly everything that you can do with Cowork, especially when it comes to your marketing activities. Now, obviously, if this is all brand new to you, there's a reason why I split this video into 3 different levels so that you can start off at level 1, let's say in week 1 or for 3 days, and then you just ramp up, you ramp up, you ramp up until the point where you are comfortable enough to actually integrate Claude Cowork into your workflow. So yeah, that's exactly that for this video. I hope if you're a marketer, somebody that is using Cowork for marketing activities, that you took away some very decent tips that you can use in your existing workflow. And so, yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other suggestions, or if you have any other specific Cowork specific tasks that you'd like for me to kind of, look into and make a video about, you can leave it in the comment section. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.